Hello, this is Hope Roski with Business, Arts, and Events. Today we are talking about accountability. We're going to talk about the second segment of accountability, which is executing on accountability. And joining us today is Eric Merz from Vertua Coaching. So welcome again, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Hope?
Awesome. Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Well, we talked earlier about the human need for accountability, but there's a second phase to this, and that's how to basically execute it. What are the tools? What are the steps one needs to make this accountability factor come into success? One of the biggest parts of it is you could talk about it, but you have to be able to execute it, and part of it is setting it up. How would a business go about, or when you go in and talk to a business, how do they go into setting up for each person's accountability plan?
Well, it varies from business to business because of where they're at in their development, as their leadership team. But some people have already put some things into place. But often the conversation will go something like, they're complaining about somebody, and they're not performing at the level that they would like. They're not sure if I'm able to help them with that. But they're spending the first part of our session talking about all the things this person hasn't done or hasn't done well, or, how they're disappointed. So I asked them the question, well, are they aware that they're falling short, or something similar to that? And then often the reply is, I'm not sure if they are or not,
Right.
which tells me a lot about, they haven't really set it up now for them to hold them accountable to anything because the expectations aren't clear. And so then we dive into, when you hired this person, what were the expectations? What can you show me their job description, the roles and responsibilities? And sometimes they can pull it out, and sometimes they don't even have it. And maybe that's where we start. So because that's where expectations usually start. When you hire a person and you bring them on board, it needs to be clear what is expected of them. Otherwise, you can't hold them accountable to it if you never told them what you expect.
Exactly. And part of that is that individual skill set. I mean, what were they bringing to the table, and is that person aware of that skill set? Because every person has their set of strengths.
Yeah, that's right. So that should get checked when you're onboarding somebody, or even before you hire them, to know what the skill set is. But we don't always know by interviews and by, things that are turned in during the process of hiring somebody. Oftentimes things look better than they really may be, or maybe they have skills they failed to mention. So sometimes we find that out later. But when we start rolling out, well, you're responsible for X, Y, and Z, we need to make sure that they do have the skills, they do have the knowledge. And then, the other part is, do they have the tools in place? They may be able to do everything well, but they use different tools at a different place when they were doing it, and now you don't have those tools for them. You may have to get those tools or teach them how to do it without those tools. But either way, you can't put that on them until you know that all those things are in place. And so I'd say that's the key thing in leadership, is to make sure that you have an alignment with the people, that they have everything they need to perform the things that you want done, and the results that
Right, correct. And with that, once those goals are set up, there needs to be that communication, that feedback communication between employer and employee. So how does that feedback part unfold?
So, there should be some formal feedback, like every quarter, maybe when they start out. It's even 30 days, how are they doing? And then so you can really cover in detail, make sure they're getting the job, they're understanding the job,
Right.
they're understanding what's expected. That should be the onboarding, the first 90 days. But after that, let's say we have somebody for couple years, maybe it's every 6 months you have a short review, or maybe annually, and you cover these things and you give them the feedback formally. But better than that is that should really be just a documentation of what you've already been giving them feedback on.
Sure.
If you're really, engaged with your staff, if you're this is probably at a supervisor level for line workers, supervising people, that they should be daily giving them feedback. Good job. We need to do better here. We can, and show them, maybe something that they need to know. So if we're doing that on a regular basis, it's no surprise what the valuation will be on the 6 month or the year. It shouldn't be a surprise.
Right.
If it's a surprise, then we haven't really done our job. And so then we, I think if I'm coaching somebody, I'll say, well, if you surprise your employee with their evaluation, then we need to work on some things.
Well, one of the things that you did mention that I think is important is what is each person needing to know. And that goes into extra training. That goes into the part of learning, further education. And to me, and even coming from the field of education, we were constantly learning new techniques, how to make things better and improve, because that's a key part to success.
I mean, it really is. Till we die, we should always be growing and learning. I mean, it might be different at different stages of our life, what I'm talking about, growth, but certainly, someone that just started in a new job, there needs to be a lot of continuous learning, but it doesn't stop. And so it's leadership's job is to make sure those opportunities are there for that growth. And there's a lot of studies out on the engagement level of employees that are poured into that have the opportunities for growth and learning. They're more engaged in their work. They believe that people are investing in them. They feel like they're contributing more because they're able to do more because they learn more. Now, the people that don't believe in abundance would say, well, I'm going to pour into them, then they're going to leave me because, my theory on that is like, God bless them. Like if they have a better opportunity outside your organization because they grew, I think that's great for the world, right? So just let it go and bring on another person and do the same thing, because you will get rewarded while they're there and well beyond the investment.
Right. And in that reward, I think you find people who are then taking more responsibility and showing a value set, because values are something that are essential to a part of all of this growth.
Right. And when we talk about accountability and let's say the values of the organization, holding people accountable to the values of the organization. I had a conversation this morning with someone, and they were talking about how they had a problem with an employee that was an harassment thing, but this person was so valuable that people thought they're not going to do anything to John, because John's a fictitious name, by the way, and nothing's going to happen. Well, they let him go because they had to. I mean, because they said all these things about what was important, the culture of the company, and if they didn't do it, then nothing they said would ever be believed again. And so, you've got to do the right thing, and you got to hold people accountable to the values of the organization, whatever those are. And you have to be an example as a leader. And if you're not doing it, you can't expect those. You can't hold accountable the people below you if you don't do it yourself. I mean,
right. And you were talking about culture, and the culture is a part of that whole climate of the company. And if you don't have that in place, and you don't have that, what I call a mission type statement in place, and setting that goal, then you kind of are then losing, and people are filtering out instead of uniting, coming together. And that's where the accountability comes in, is within that, in that teamwork and people collaborating.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard the term, these rules are for thee, but not for me. That just does not work. You have
Right.
to you have to show the example as the leader. And if you do that, then when you hold people accountable to it, people go, well, yeah, I'm sorry, I messed up. They changed. They're either they're gonna do one of two things. They're gonna leave the organization really realizing they don't belong there because they don't want that culture or that value system, or they're going to get in line. And so that's what the accountability really benefits the organization. But the leader has to be leading and be accountable, him or herself, right?
Absolutely. And then, as we move into this next segment, we're going to be talking about the results. But all of these pieces that we just discussed earlier, from setting up and to looking at the productivity and self-reporting and things to that effect, this all has to come into play in what I call the middle part of this accountability piece.
Yeah,
And
it does. I mean, and the metrics is another part of the execution that's important because it helps people stay on track. So you need to have metrics in place where it's applicable, and some of those are numbers, and some of them are, something that's more qualitative. But if you have those things in place to where people know if they're on track or off track of what needs to be happening, it's very helpful. And it's also encouraging when people see how well they do when just people watching the score.
yeah.
Don't they do better when they watch the score.
Sure, sure. So speaking of watching, I want the viewers who are watching to know that they can get in touch with you. Eric, can you please tell the viewers how they can get in touch with you?
You can call me on the phone at 661-343-2373, and you might want to text first and tell me who you are, and that you're going to give me a call, or I'll call you back right away. Or you can go to vertuacoaching.com, and on that website you can sign up for my newsletter, or you can schedule a time that we can talk.
Well,
Or
Eric,
you can email me.
I was going to say, I'm going to be looking forward to talking with you again, because we're going to wrap up this series in the results of accountability, and I'll be looking forward to talking with you soon about that.
I look forward to it, and I'll hold you to that.
Okay, you do that. Hold me accountable. I'll be responsible, I promise. This is Hope Roski with Business, Arts, and Events.